Do you know when a man turns into a tyrant? When his sense of security is threatened, when paranoia is instilled in the hearts of the innocent. To understand the concept, let us talk about the general state of society first. Attaining justice is difficult for those who have nothing to offer in return. Justice, which should have been the greatest social service in a society, was instead turned into an exploitative mechanism. Beyond being infiltrated by greed, this mechanism suffers from another fatal flaw: performative justice, where criminals are set free or pardoned for the sake of upholding one's reputation as a humanitarian. As a result, the tolerant suffer while the intolerant prosper. This flawed justice system indeed creates more tyrants, but it does so not by punishing the innocent, but rather by rewarding the guilty. These events threaten the sense of security which every common man wants and deserves. However, once he witnesses that the rules and laws of society work differently for the corrupt, while he is forced to adhere to them by the letter, his compassion slowly begins to erode. In his mind, compassion must only exist for victims. A criminal, no matter the circumstances of the crime, must be eliminated. Of course, there must exist great distinction while judging the severity of the crimes. Crimes which cause monetary losses are redeemable, but any crime which results in the loss of life must never go unpunished. When we act liberally and sympathize with the perpetrators of violence, the innocent become paranoid with the thought that one day they will end up becoming a victim themselves. One day they will end up becoming a statistic of injustice which these very same judges and politicians quote while preaching about morals which they don't uphold. The next question which comes to my mind is that why have we failed to unite and speak out against injustice? Why do we continue to suffer? I think the reason why the good men of society fail or hesitate to speak out against injustice is because despite taking all of the risk, the benefits will be enjoyed only by the strangers. One person assumes the risk at the possible cost of his own well being and life. But for what? So that a stranger doesn't go through an ordeal which another stranger went through. For example, if I'm protesting against a murder committed by a politician who can very easily silence me to a permanent end, it would force me to wonder, is this worth the risk? The victim is already dead. If I speak out, maybe I'll be next on the hit list. So, am I raising my voice simply so that another random stranger does not end up in a ditch by that very same politician? The good man is indeed paranoid once again to not become a victim. But at the same time, he also wonders, what are the odds that I will go through the same thing? That my family will have to run from pillar to post in order to secure justice for myself. I feel this is one of the most lacking abilities of a human being, that till we suffer from injustice ourselves, we are unable to appreciate the complete depth of its terror. The second reason is this misplaced compassion which has been embedded into our minds. The good men have always been taught that no matter how great the evil, they must tolerate and never resort to killing. Media and literature have assisted in propagating this very narrative as well. The stereotypical dialogues you hear about killing the villain would make the hero equally evil, or the famous quote, if you kill a killer, the number of killers remain the same. These have been deeply ingrained in the minds of the general people to guilt them into submission. If you kill a killer, the number of unjust men in society decreases, which is a fundamental pillar in moving towards social progress by ensuring the erasure of destructive elements. Tolerance to criminals who willfully cause the loss of life has been one of the strongest reasons behind societal decay, as we are forced to intermingle and coexist with unfit savages in a civilized society. I question you that why? A person who has lived his entire life with integrity and honesty, paying his taxes, following the law, being polite, and so on. Why does such an individual need to live in the same housing complex as someone who was convicted of murder and has now been released on parole or due to a compromised investigation? Why does the good man have to now live in paranoia for the rest of his life about the supposedly reformed nuisance who lives perhaps 10 feet away from him? What if this released convict decides to kill again? Can or will anyone take complete liability for the harm caused to the innocent man? Will the prison psychiatrist or counselor who certified the reformed nature of this convict ever sign a declaration where he or she takes complete responsibility if the convict kills again? Will the judge who signed the release order ever agree to be held liable to negligent homicide if the convict kills again? Why don't these people harbor the convict in their homes, locked away from those who are living in peace? Reforming criminals is solely the burden of the government and those who are distributing unearned forgiveness to people who don't deserve it. Released convicts of violent crimes with an imprisonment period of greater than 5 years should not be allowed to become a part of civilized society again. The government must establish separate living spaces for such individuals far away from the general public. This very notion about showing mercy to the guilty has been created by the wrongdoers to protect themselves even in defeat. A message which has been ingrained so deeply in the hearts of the people that anyone who even defends himself from harm is branded as a killer. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind could not be any more wrong. If one person is capable of blinding 100 others, then blinding this one aggressor would result in saving the rest. The criminal has made his choice. He must not be allowed to show regret once he faces punishment. Before regret must come realization, and those who have realization never need to regret. Looking up at the guillotine, every person can recite the Bible. Now, one can argue, when does the realization about right and wrong start to become transparent? Putting forth my personal opinion, feel free to disagree. I feel that every individual understands the difference between right and wrong at a primary and functional level by the age of 16. I'm not talking about right and wrong in terms of being able to have discussions about the finer nuances of the morality of man, but right and wrong in the plainest of terms. Is it right to kill or not? Is it right to rape or not? By the age of 16, I feel we do not need to educate someone about why they should not kill or grievously hurt others. If they still choose to engage in such behavior, then they have forfeited their right to living a life of dignity and liberty. If a man, who in his complete and conscious state commits any untold harm upon others, he must be dealt with in the same way. I reiterate, it is not the burden of the innocent to rehabilitate the wicked. Neither it is the virtue of righteous men to show compassion to the guilty. Only those who see their own reflection in evil are the ones who sympathize with it. They fear that someday they could be judged for the very same sins. This is the reason why the executive, legislature, or judiciary will never implement nor push for the implementation of stringent and transparent procedures which can help in identifying and eliminating these unwanted elements. If they did so, they would be the first ones to perish. Once again, the innocent and the virtuous are burdened with tolerating evil. Ultimately, the paranoia, the misplaced compassion, the silent witness to injustice, all of these feelings culminate into one final emotion: powerless. The feeling of being powerless is perhaps the most overwhelming emotion a person could feel. This feeling, along with the paranoia, it keeps growing until one day the innocent man becomes the tyrant. It is absolutely justified in his eyes. He is not going to wait to become a victim or watch somebody close to him become one. In doing so, he loses his heart and thinks only with apprehensions. Whenever the next great dictatorship will rise in the world, I feel it will be a man from a modest background who has been a victim of this paranoia and injustice himself. He will strive towards eliminating these unwanted elements with great force. My only hope is that he is as critical of himself as he is of others, that he does not end up punishing those who are falsely accused or who can actually be reformed just for the sake of achieving quick progress. In spite of it all, I would always suggest that severe punishments must be meted out only in cases when the following are satisfied. for violent crimes punishable with imprisonment of greater than 5 years, for grievous injury or death, where no justifiable motive exists other than causing unwarranted hurt or injury, and where the evidence obtained, both in favor or against the accused, must be absolute in nature and not merely circumstantial. There can be no mistake while judging the life of a man. We cannot be as callous as those who take human life just for the sake of it. Will such a man ever rise? The just dictator? Who knows? Life is uncertain, and many are consumed by this uncertainty of human life. They keep reading about these transgressions and are bothered by their inability to do anything against it. What is more frightening is the possibility of going through the same. If that happens, what then? What should a man actually do? Should he lose his life for this battle, which pits himself against an entire civilization that is filled with immorality? Should he subject himself to ridicule for trying to live honestly? Although it is rare, a few people actually join public administration with the intention to serve honestly. Their reward for being honest is being transferred repeatedly to some remote area where they are complete aliens and helpless. Their marital life struggles as a result. The safety of their children is at stake every time they are relocated to a place which is filled with hooligans who do not respect the law. The local police force is bought and paid for by the godmen. Throughout the years, some of these honest serving individuals have also been murdered. Sadly, nobody ever cares. A man can keep enduring any hardship for a just cause that he truly believes in. However, once the family of such a man, let's say his wife, withdraws her support for him and ridicules his honesty, he feels completely defeated. Perhaps the spouse is fearful for her own life or her children, and at this stage, you cannot blame her. No defeat is worse for a man when the people he loves do not support him in his justful crusade. When such a man loses all of his faith, all of his beliefs that he has held on to his entire life, he dies that very day, continuing to simply breathe without a soul, or he gives in to that same injustice because his values have never got him anything except hardships. Finally, a tyrant is born. He wants to conquer all of his adversaries, whether they are just or not. He believes in only one thing, and that is himself. He fights to preserve what he lost a long time ago, the last remnants of himself. Maybe there is a part of him which still believes that what he is doing is wrong, but he cannot risk being defeated by his own apprehensions ever again. The loss would break him. He keeps striving for more and more till there is nothing left to conquer. In spite of it all, he is still not happy. What more could he possibly want? I guess he does not know it himself. A bottomless pit of hopelessness who never wanted to be the way that he is right now. Every second of his existence is a punishment for him, and still he strives for another day of survival. He has to justify everything now, all of his pain and suffering. He must still be alive for a reason after all. If not, then what was the reason for his defeat and the feeling of powerlessness which consumed him every single day? What was the reason that his virtuousness was the very thing that led him down to the path of self destruction? The anger is just not at himself, but at the world who has rejected him and his morality. Everyone allowed the injustice to thrive and prosper. So, why should he stop now? He truly believes that his tyranny is what people deserve. His will is the only thing which matters. The tree which has now grown and bloomed the fruit of evil was originally planted as a seed of purity. But the people kept poisoning it, cutting off its branches, plucking its leaves. They stopped watering it, but somehow the tree found a way to nourish itself with the poison. Now, nothing can uproot the tree except the weight of its own poisonous fruit, refusing to let go, only to inevitably fall on the ground near its own very roots. The fruit eventually blooms, but it eradicates everything, including itself. Thank you for watching.